BC Road Builders, congratulations on your first virtual AGM. I am honored to be a part of it. In this rapid fire session, we are talking about mental health in the workplace, your new workplace reality. So why now? Why is mental health becoming your new workplace reality? Because the truth is that anxiety and other mental health disorders are part of the way you will manage your business going forward. Regardless of which side of the masking, anti-masking, pandemic, reality, or hoax spectrum you are on, there is one absolute, and that is that mental health in the workplace is here, and it is here to stay. Mental health has always been here. COVID has simply brought it out of the shadows and into the light. COVID is normalizing mental health in the workplace. Many times, your employee is not even aware of the impact COVID is having on their mental health. They are just in fear of losing their job, in fear of no social interactions, in fear of no holiday gatherings, in fear of loved ones becoming ill, and in fear of not meeting their financial commitments. And that fear and uncertainty breeds anxiety and other mental health conditions that transcends into your workplace. Whether your employees are distracted by, be it health, finances, family, or workplace issues, at the end of the day, it's all the same. Distracted employees are unsafe employees. They are ultimately unproductive and unprofitable employees. Just over 1 year ago, no one knew that COVID-19 even existed. Now this virus has spread to almost every country on the planet, infecting at least 60 million people whom we know about and many more whom we do not. It has killed another 1.5 million and growing. Now it is crashing economies, it is breaking healthcare systems, it is filling our hospitals and emptying our restaurants and our public spaces. It is disrupting modern society on a scale that most living people have never witnessed. Soon, most everyone will know someone who has been infected. Like World War II or the 9/11 attacks, this pandemic has already imprinted itself on this nation's psyche, and this pandemic has imprinted itself upon your workplace. Did you know that the word lockdown was just named Word of the Year by Collins Dictionary? Lockdown. This relatively innocuous little noun that just 1 year ago meant prisoners being confined to their cells has now come to define so many lives across the world in 2020. Along with lockdown, mental health came to be the workplace word of the year for 2020 and beyond. Have a glance at just some of these headlines. The impact of COVID-related stress on employee engagement. Almost half of all Canadian workers say they need mental health support, and it is hurting productivity. In a COVID-19 world, mental health is workforce health. Canadian Business Magazine headline states why workplace well-being is a priority we cannot afford to ignore. They go on to say that Canadian workers are suffering from anxiety and depression at crisis levels, and they are not wrong. And along with anxiety and depression comes a whole host of effects, including self-soothing or self-medicating. Let's look at some Canadian statistics. But statistically speaking, you are already experiencing these issues and the impact of these numbers. And why is that? Because most likely someone in your workplace is dealing with a mental health issue right now, whether you are aware of it or not. Because pre-COVID stats tell us that approximately half of all Canadians will have experienced some form of mental illness by the age of 40. A full 1 in 5 of us experience a mental health issue each year. Then a global crisis like this pandemic strikes, and our collective mental health is put under even more strain than usual. The Canadian Association of Mental Health looked at the impact of COVID on mental health and substance abuse issues, an issue already impacting road builders and others in safety-sensitive environments. As you can see, 21% of those responding to this study reported having moderate to severe anxiety, and over 25% of those responding are binge drinking as a coping mechanism. 20% also reported being lonely, and another 21% being depressed. Further, these categories are not mutually exclusive, meaning a worker may be anxious, binge drinking, and depressed. Like any statistic though, particularly those impacting the health of your employees, it is important to note who is most at risk. So do not think of these stats as just numbers, think of them as your workers. What are the demographics in your workplace in terms of age and gender? Where do your employees fit in? Here we can see that the number of Canadian workers who experience COVID-related anxiety are greater among those aged 18 to 39 years old. The incidences of anxiety decrease with each older generation or cohort. Of real interest in this study is that the data shows us that as the pandemic continues over time, anxiety is shown to be increasing among the two younger groups, while the 65 and older cohort, we actually see levels of anxiety decreasing over the lifespan of this pandemic. Note that as we look at the impact that COVID has had on one's anxiety levels between the genders, that females are statistically more susceptible to COVID-related anxiety than males. Finally, in terms of those respondents that have children in the household, we see that anxiety levels are higher in those respondents, which seems logical. So, has mental health, stress, anxiety, and depression always been a workplace issue, or is this something new? Let me assure you, mental health has always been a workplace factor. In fact, much of this data aligns with non-COVID related anxiety and depression levels in Canada. So this is nothing new. It is just becoming statistically more prevalent because of COVID. While we generalized just now and looked at anxiety levels by age, gender, and family status, it does not tell the whole story. Otherwise, it would be too easy to say that to mitigate any exposure to mental health in your workplace, you should only employ those individuals who exhibit lower levels of risk, males over 60, who have no children in the household. I can assure you, from my experience in this industry, that alone is not your solution. Anxiety does not discriminate, and how you respond to stress can depend on additional factors like one's background, social support from their network, their financial situation, health and emotional background, the community they live in, among many other factors. Let's turn ourselves to the financial impact of mental health on Canadian organizations like yours. Mental health problems and illnesses are estimated to account for almost 30% of all short and long-term disability claims in Canada. Here are some other quick facts about psychological or emotional health in the workplace provided by the Mental Health Commission of Canada, as well as the Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety. 1 in 5 Canadians will experience a psychological health problem or illness in any given year. Psychological health problems and illnesses are the #1 cause of disability in Canada. Psychological health problems cost the Canadian economy about $51 billion per year, $20 billion of which results from work-related causes. 47% of working Canadians consider their work to be the most stressful part of their daily life. Yet, only 23% of Canadian workers feel comfortable talking to you, their employer, about an emotional health issue. All of this accounts for increasingly distracted workers, unsafe workers, and the general lowering of productivity of the Canadian workforce like yours. So what does this actually all look like on the job or on your job site? Well, the implications of mental health in the workplace have a direct impact on your workers through increases in absenteeism. Pre-COVID stats show that each week at least 500,000 Canadians miss work due to a mental health illness. Presenteeism. This is where your employee is actually present, but with reduced productivity. We also see an increase in disability claims, injuries, illnesses, grievances, complaints, and turnover, and more. As such, you have a vested interest in helping to prevent the onset of injury or illness to both the physical and the mental health of your workers. As you know, employers must, under Canada Occupational Health and Safety regulations, take all reasonable actions in creating and maintaining healthy and safe workplaces. But psychologically safe workplaces? As an employer, is this your responsibility? And if so, is it a nice to do or a need to do? Well, certainly it is a nice to do or a reasonable responsibility, and it makes business sense. Your workplace plays an essential role in maintaining positive mental health. It gives your employees the opportunity to feel productive, to feel engaged, to be a contributor. And as we have seen, it reduces absenteeism, illness, injuries, and claims. Your workplace can also be a stressful environment that contributes to the rise of mental health issues. Remember that 47% of working Canadians consider the workplace to be the most stressful part of their daily life. As such, can we really continue to limit our definition of occupational health and safety to just the physical? What does WorkSafe BC have to say about this? Well, their website states that they provide benefits for mental health disorders related to employment, but the disorder must have happened at work or have been caused by work. Among other criteria, the disorder must be due to one or more work-related stressors. There are additional employer obligations related to mental health, as defined by the Canada Labour Code, BC and other provincial employment standards, occupational health and safety, and the Human Rights Code. As you continue to navigate this pandemic and the numerous restrictions, limitations, and transitioning rules being placed on your workplace over the coming months and years, leaders like you are likely to see employees struggle with anxiety, depression, burnout, trauma, and PTSD like never before. Exactly what can you do to support your workers as they face these new and pre-existing stressors, safety concerns, and economic upheaval? Well, here are 5 leadership strategies to improve mental health in your workplace. And the good news is that many of the tools and resources you need are some of the same ones that you've already been using to make you an effective leader in this industry. First, abolish mental health stigma in the workplace. Remember our stat that said that by the age of 40, approximately 50% of Canadians will have experienced some form of mental illness, and 1 in 5 people experienced a mental health issue each year. That's a very good reason to start by removing workplace stigma, because mental health is no longer a marginal issue, it is a daily workplace reality. A few tips to help reduce stigma. First, know the facts. Educate yourself about mental illness, including substance abuse disorders. Secondly, be aware of your attitudes and your behavior. Examine your own judgmental thinking and what messages you may be unintentionally sending. Third, choose your words carefully. The way you speak can affect the attitude of others. Fourth, focus on the positive. Mental illness, including addictions, are only part of your workers' larger picture. Fifth, protect yourself. You would not discriminate against a worker with a physical disability. It is also against the law to discriminate against anyone with a mental health issue. And while you are at it, encourage your senior managers to do the same. Next, recognize that mental health is a spectrum, and this step is critical. Mental health is not on or off, and it is not black or white. It is a spectrum, and it is important to recognize that there are degrees between being mentally healthy and being mentally ill. Like having a case of the sniffles versus having a debilitating bout of the flu. Similarly, there is a spectrum to this illness. People can struggle with mental health issues without having a severe mental health illness. Individuals can also move through this spectrum, experiencing mental health highs and lows within the same day. As an employer, being understanding of these ups and downs and recognizing that employees are only human is critical. Most likely, you won't know what factors are impacting your employees' ability to remain mentally healthy, so the best you can do is to try putting yourself in their shoes. If your employees are working with the public, that may cause or accelerate anxiety and fear. Be particularly empathetic with these workers right now. They likely don't get enough credit, and they are the ones keeping our world and your business running. Let them know that you see that and that you understand that working with the public is daunting now more than ever. If your employees are working from home, let them know that you see the struggles and understand things are difficult right now for everyone. Remember that some employees working from home will struggle with the isolation, which will lead to or exacerbate anxiety and depression. Look for ways to keep them connected. But whether your workers are working from home or on the front lines, acknowledge that this is a challenging time for everyone, and so your patience and empathy will go a long way. And while you're at it, adopt some support programs. When staying connected isn't enough, ensure that there are social supports for your employees and they know how to access those resources. If unionized, check out what resources are available for their members. Look to the road builder training partners. For instance, the Construction Industry Training Network is offering a series of workplace wellness webinars in 2021. You can check them out on their website. And if you don't already have one, consider adopting an employee assistance plan or an EAP, which is a confidential counseling service for employees experiencing difficulties that will affect their work performance. You have a vested interest in the ability of your employees to work at their full potential, and support programs are valuable resources to help them cope with issues affecting their ability to reach that potential. And finally, to your role, exhibit leadership. Managing mental health does not require a different skill set from that you are currently using to manage your crews and to lead your health and safety efforts. What is required are leadership characteristics you are already exhibiting, like providing structure, being empathetic, and remaining true to the original DNA of your company while having organizational discipline. Start by being responsive and communicate. Keep your employees informed about new and upcoming workplace changes as much as possible. When workers are informed of what changes are coming, they are better able to cope with the change. While a lot of workplace practices are in flux right now, continue to set expectations. This is not the time to drop the ball on your organizational rules, policies, and practices. Next, acknowledge the emotions your workers may be experiencing. This is not a normal time, and it is very normal for people to be experiencing anxiety and other emotions during this time. It is important to acknowledge that and to let your employees know that they are not alone. And if you notice someone on your team is acting differently than usual, take note, reach out to them. See if you or someone else on your team can offer some support. Simply check in and make sure they are okay. It's the right thing to do. And if nothing else, do it for your bottom line, people aside. We have looked at the cost of the impact of mental health at work. So if your organization is at all resemblant of the average Canadian workplace, you are already spending a lot of hidden bottom line dollars dealing with the impact of mental health in your workplace. So look to ways to mitigate that through your actions. In closing, recognize that social change or social upheaval drives corporate change. The legalization of cannabis brought drug and alcohol policy awareness to the forefront. The hashtag #MeToo movement made companies revisit their bullying and harassment practices. The Black Lives Matter movement is bringing much needed diversity and inclusion discussions to the workplace. And COVID is getting us to talk about mental health. But it will take more than discussion and policies. It will require empathetic and hands-on leadership from you and your managers to break ground when it comes to facing mental health in the workplace head-on. We've all been a bit beaten up and bruised by this prolonged crisis. And remember, it is your leadership that will differentiate you from the rest during the recovery stage. All the best.